I want to start off by saying, first and foremost, that there isn't a force as powerful as the black community and black solidarity. I think it's very, very important to keep these spaces for us, by us, and safe at all costs. However, to do that successfully, I think we need to address issues within our own community. And one of the largest issues that I think is something that we face on the day-to-day is toxic masculinity in our community. Now, in order for everyone to better understand what I'm talking about, I think we should probably better answer the question of what toxic masculinity is and what exactly makes it what exactly makes it toxic in the first place. It's the traditional and cultural norms in society that prove to be harmful to everybody. It's your father telling you not to cry if you feel loss, pain, sorrow, or depression. It's our society conditioning us as black people that we can't experience mental illness, and for us to not seek help for that. I don't know if anybody's experienced this. Probably have, like your guy friends or even your girlfriends or any of your friends being like, no homo or pause or not being about that gay shit or anything like that. You know. Toxic masculinity is toxic because it stays with you your entire life and it becomes poisonous to those around you. What makes matters worse about toxic masculinity is that it's so very much normalized. A lot of people take part in the behaviors that are toxic masculinity and think it's okay. But for us as a community to put an end to that, I think the best thing that we should do is hold each other accountable. Now, I'm going to scale it back a couple years ago. I was on my Facebook, and I came across this YouTube video that my friend posted. It was a kid in a karate class, and he was cracking the board to try to get his next belt. After trying to crack one after the other, you can tell he was in a lot of pain, and what happened was he started crying. After that took place, the teacher stopped the class, and he asked, why are you crying? I'm going to stop here and say that this part is super important because usually when you see stuff like that happen, as a man, when somebody asks you why you're crying, it's a rhetorical question, right? It's a question to almost infer that if you're a man, you should be silent about your pain, whether it's visible pain or invisible pain. Now, in this situation, the teacher's question wasn't rhetorical, it was genuine. He actually wanted to know what was paining the boy and for him to come out and talk about it. The teacher's conclusion was that oftentimes, we as boys and as men get taught to not express our emotions. We often get taught to internalize them, and more than often than not, these emotions begin to fester and become poison for us as we grow. As I watched the video, I was provided with infinite insight as to what this means on a larger scale for black men. That much of our downfall isn't just, of course, due in part to white supremacy, but in the toxic way in which we navigate our masculinity. Now, toxic masculinity is a phenomenon that has its roots that date as far back as slavery, where slave owners would almost rape black men by emphasizing and exaggerating their physicality. So the more perceived manly, masculine that you are, the more desirable you are to the slave owner. This exaggeration or this hypermasculinization of black men not only became a metric for desirability to slave owners, but as a means of survival for black men, as they were often beaten, raped, and killed for appearing too feminine. Now, this understanding of the black man is this exaggerated concept of masculinity still rings true in today's society, and of course we've seen it in the news. We've seen it in films. One of the most original films, Birth of a Nation, depicts a black man in that way. We've seen it in Hillary Clinton's 1996 interview as she referred to black men as super predators. And we've seen it in the way they depict black boys after they get shot by police to kind of justify why they killed them in the first place, right? We've also seen it in our own communities as well. While non-black folks have also co-opted the slave narrative of blackness in today's society, we've also been guilty of doing them as well. To many black men, being masculine is a parallel to being black. So in most cases, if you are less masculine, you are somehow less black. The slave narrative of blackness has also been co-opted in our understanding of black power and has been echoed by many black power leaders. One very key example is when Minister Farrakhan went on the Breakfast Club to talk about how black feminization would lead to the downfall of the black man. This kind of, to me, bears significance because the question now becomes if whether or not our understanding of black masculinity is in fact empowering or not. Before I go on, I'm gonna maybe ask yourself this now, and maybe throughout my speech, and maybe after. In the way we define black masculinity and black power, ask yourself, who does it actually give power to, and who does it take power from? And be mindful of the dynamics and how that works. Now, I'm gonna take a second, stop talking about like facts and all that stuff, and maybe take a second and talk about me. My name is James Yeboah. I am a Brampton-based painter and artist. Back in August, I curated a show and I hosted a show called When Black Boys Cry. In this show, I talked about how violently we raise our boys into toxic masculinity and how this behavior in turn breeds even more violence within our communities. To give you some insight, oftentimes black people's definition, as I said before, of masculinity is very much adopted by white Eurocentric views of blackness. Many times black men and women get hypersexualized and are considered primitive, savage, so forth and so on. We see these depictions, of course, in art. We see these pictures. We see them in film, and we see them in various other forms of media. And people say these things about our bodies all of the time. Now, my show uses the premise that the understanding of masculinity is co-opted by white colonialists and put in place through violence and conditioning. So pretty much what I said in the last paragraph. In one of my pieces, as you can see here, entitled Freedom From, I talk about how through vulnerability and expression of emotions, the subject of the painting is free from the constraints of toxic masculinity. He's torn apart his conditioning and in internalizing his emotions, and has taken the first step, much like the child in the YouTube video that I saw, into redefining what it means to be a man. Now, after my show, I was kind of met with a few concerns. Most notably, one of the attendants made a comment about how my work made him uncomfortable because I prioritize men in my paintings and the relationships between men. To me, this comment had way deeper implications. To me, his idea of masculinity, that is his imagining of the black man as the epitome of raw strength and sexual virility, is so ingrained and so normalized that the thought of imagining a black man as anything else was foreign. He was an important example of how black people co-opted the slave narrative into their understanding of themselves. Understanding manhood as anything else was a legitimate concern to him, and trying to break from that mentality was, to me, at the time, what I thought almost impossible. I'll be honest with you, when he made that comment, I was pissed. Of course, you don't really want to hear anybody saying bad things about your art show or concerns or anything like that, but mostly I was kind of upset because he was one of the people that didn't see things the way I saw my art show. But I also felt that he may have perhaps seen himself in my work at the same time. It was at that point where I came to realize that maybe his preconceived notions of manhood was beginning to crumble, and I may have started what I was trying to accomplish in the first place. So you kind of, at first I was pissed, and I was like, no, wait, mission accomplished, maybe. Now let me just take another second, maybe another step back, and talk about that YouTube video again, because it's very important. And if you guys haven't seen it after the show or anything like that, definitely come to me. I can provide links for you and tell you about it or anything like that. I want to talk about The Boy Who Cried Again and what the implications are for the next generation's black community. By being taught it's okay to express his emotions freely and unapologetically, a seed was planted within him to not only go through life internalizing emotions, but to ensure that the generation after him doesn't have to go through what he went through up until now. By teaching that child that it's okay to cry, to me, that teacher taught him strength, not weakness. He taught that child to be brave enough to express his emotions and to be open about how he feels, and he began to break apart the preconceived notions of blackness and masculinity that, to me, that has plagued us for centuries. When I saw that video, I saw a child moving away from the slave narrative of black masculinity and saw a man slowly redefining black power as we know it. While I was painting, whew. While I, while I was painting and working on my show, I saw that boy, and I saw him in what I was working on at the time, and I wanted to invoke what I felt, and I wanted other black people to see that and feel what I felt. As a community, I think we should follow this example. I think we should foster behaviors that are both healthy and wholesome, and teach others that same behavior. As black men, I think we need to hold our behaviors that can be seen as toxic accountable. And let's not base masculinity on how white folks defined it from the times of slavery to how they describe us in the news. Let's dismantle preconceived notions of black masculinity and rebuild it in our own image. Let's do what I like to call decolonizing masculinity. Thank you.